Hey, it's David. Welcome to the show. Welcome to A Changed Mind, a sanctuary for the human spirit, a place where we believe in the certainty of the goodness of the future. I am your host, your friend, your guide, David Bayer. And man, welcome to episode 1. This has actually been a really long time coming. It's been about 5 years since my wife, Carol, and I decided that we wanted to share what we had learned in our own journey and be able to support others through the podcast form. And now is the time. And what an appropriate time. By the way, this may be your first episode that you've listened to, or you may have gone back and you're just catching the first show. I just want to welcome you. I want to honor you. If you end up enjoying this episode, do me a favor and subscribe so that you don't miss a beat, so you get a notification every time a new show comes out. And leave me a comment. I read all of them, and it's really a way for us to get more exposure through the platforms that we're using to try to support you in creating a changed mind and a changed world. And the recording of this episode and the release of it, really the launch of the podcast, is at such an appropriate time for myself and for Carol. There's really one holiday a year. We celebrate a lot of different holidays. We celebrate with our kids, and we enjoy holidays or holy days. But there's something about the 4th of July, which is when we've decided to launch the show, and when this episode has come out, that is really near and dear to our hearts. I know it is a day where it's a celebration of fireworks and hot dogs and hamburgers and getting together with friends, and maybe throwing down a couple of brews or your favorite non-alcoholic beverage, depending upon your preference. That's what we do today. But 250 years ago, it was a very, very different type of day. It was a day where just over 50 men and the unbelievable women who supported them essentially signed a death warrant because they decided that they were going to liberate themselves from the most powerful empire in the world, the British Empire, and it was the beginning of the American Revolution. And a day of independence. And at that time, the revolutionaries, the people who were looking for a new way of life, who were open to a new possibility against all odds, they were looking for freedoms like religious freedom, freedom of expression, freedom of speech, freedom. They wanted to escape the monetary and banking system of the Central Bank of England and of Europe, so they were looking for freedom of their financial security, taxation with representation. And today, we celebrate Independence Day, and there's a new type of independence. There's a resurrection or a rebirth taking place, which is in consciousness, meaning we're learning how to liberate ourselves one by one from the tyranny of our own minds, from the incessant chatter of our inner critic, from the ego, to free ourselves from the thoughts and the feelings associated with not being good enough, or feeling like there's not enough time, or we're not as far along as we should be, that manifests into our actions as comparing ourselves to others, or procrastination, or anxiety, or depression, or just stress and tension on the system. The 4th of July, or Independence Day, for Carol and I, represents the possibility of a new kind of freedom, just like it did 250 years ago. But today, it's not the freedom of a nation, it's the freedom of an individual. And the irony is that as we learn how to free ourselves, and that's really what a changed mind is about. Every episode is going to be teaching you the tools, the distinctions, the frameworks that we've developed over the last decade as we've gone beyond where personal development has been, to not just become self-aware, yes, of course, deepen our self-awareness, but also to learn how to rewire our brains, and change our minds, and re-engineer our own lives and our reality. Every episode is going to be about that. It's about today liberating ourselves one by one, and then coming together as a humanity, as a fellowship, and liberating the world. Because we're at a point in time right now that I think is one of the most interesting periods of time to be alive, to incarnate into the physical body. We're at a point where humanity is evolving. And I don't mean that in sort of an offhanded, like we're always growing and evolving and expanding and changing sort of way. Things are changing. Of course, things are changing. Things are changing at a speed beyond any time in history, right? You have the emergence of artificial intelligence. You've got the development of blockchain. You've got a lot of changes going on in the world with the ultra wealthy and centralized power. There are new democratic movements that are emerging. We have censorship that's taking place and an attempt at reinstitution of free speech. We've got a lot of political divide. We've got social divide. We've got values divide. And I believe it's all part of the process of actually a new earth, or establishing the kingdom of heaven here and now, where, really there's not that much difference between what we all want. I think we want to be healthy. We want peace for our friends and our family. We want to have financial insecurity. We want to be able to do good work in the world. We want freedom. We want to be able to express ourselves the way that we want to express ourselves. We want to have respect and love for each other. We want to have connection and compassion and presence. Right? There's really not that much difference between all of us. And so this time in history that feels like a tremendous amount of uncertainty and conflict and chaos, I think is just the birth process of what is going to be. I know it's the birth process for what is going to be an incredible new world for really the first time. I mean, unless you believe in, prior civilizations, which I'm certainly not opposed to believing that maybe there were other civilizations here that had figured out how to live in harmony with nature and with themselves. I think that's the process we're in. And so this 4th of July, as we celebrate the opportunity for a new independence, which is the liberation of our own minds, the freedom to feel good about ourselves and about our lives. We're doing that one by one, and we're coming together to start to become an evolved humanity. And what that means is, as we've gotten to this really interesting time in our lives where we understand the human body more than ever, we understand consciousness more than ever before. There's this intersection between neuroscience and neurophysiology and behavioral psychology and an understanding of peak and flow states. Of course, a lot of the things that we're learning in terms of how we can optimize ourselves come from the wisdom teachings and the spiritual teachings. And so science and spirituality and psychology are sort of all coming together right now, giving us an open doorway to grow in ways that we've never grown before as a species. When a species evolves, when there's a speciation event, what we're used to seeing is that, a certain living creature goes from living in the water, right, or maybe amphibious, spending some time on land, to being full-time on land, right? It's evolved into a reptile. Or we see birds that are migrating to a place where their food source is buried 3 or 4 inches below the sand, and so their beaks over time grow. The species evolves. Human beings really haven't evolved that much. If you look at the human being operating system, if you look at our nervous system, if you look at our physiology, we really haven't evolved that much over 10,000 years or longer. But what's happening now is, as a result of understanding the types of things that we're going to be talking about on a regular basis on this show, which are at the intersection of science and spirituality and psychology and high performance, we're able now to apply a higher level of what I would call mindset to our experiences. We have an ability now to actually use our mind to rewire our brains and our nervous systems. And so when you're in the practice of this on a regular basis, a practice of mindset, you might call it a spiritual practice, what happens over time is you begin to train your nervous system away from the fight or flight of really the primal human being, the sympathetic expression of the nervous system that most people are living in on a day-to-day basis, which is why we see so many stress-related diseases in the world. It's why we see so much violence in the world. It's why we see many of the problems in the world. You're able to actually train your nervous system into parasympathetic, into rest and relaxation. And you're able to change your brain, to rewrite the memories of your childhood, and to re-perceive perhaps what happened to you through a higher intelligent lens, to heal your personal stories and your traumas, which is a rewiring of the neural networks of your brain. So human beings are the first species to be able to consciously rewire themselves, to change our nervous system, to change the structure of our brains. And so if you're here, it's because you're on the leading edge of where humanity is going, literally becoming a part of the evolution of the species as man and woman and human being evolve into the next level of who we're becoming. And we can see that there's this divergence taking place in the world. You have some people becoming even more conscious of what they're eating, even more conscious of what they're speaking, more conscious of what they're doing, wanting to live a purpose-aligned life, being conscious of the way that they're interacting with others, really deciding and choosing intentionally to develop and embody the higher level values that we have as society, to be more patient and understanding regardless of disagreements. As I mentioned before, to be more present and loving, to be more courageous, to be more faithful, noble values, right? There's a segment of society that is respecting the opinions of all others, creating a safe space for anyone to authentically and vulnerably express themselves. And then there's a segment of society that's almost like moving in the complete opposite direction, right? Completely connected to the internet, to social media, disconnected from nature, living in an echo chamber and a feedback loop that's creating more stress, more anxiety, eating ultra-processed foods, not being conscious of their exposure, for example, to environmental toxins, or always looking for an enemy to be opposed to, right? And this is a lot of, even though the promise of social media was to bring us all together, it's a lot of what, social media has been propagating. And so we have this falling out now of people who are, wanting to move away from social media, but still wanting to connect with people. We have a falling out of religion, although there are many, many wonderful, places of worship, churches, temples, mosques, otherwise, right? Great religious leaders and teachers, but we have a lot of people who want to have faith, but have disconnected from religion because they've experienced some religious trauma. We have so many people in the world who are waking up and realizing that the job that they were working as a result of just sort of being indoctrinated into this industrialized model of working a 9-to-5, sort of regardless of what it is to make a paycheck, want to actually contribute to the world in a meaningful way, and to be able to have a purpose-driven career or a purpose-driven business, and to be able to lift the ceiling off of their earning capabilities and to have prosperity and abundance. We have this great opt-out taking place in the public school system where, I think something like, I don't know what the latest statistic is, but it's almost like 10% of children are being homeschooled, not just because of what happened during the pandemic, but post-pandemic. We have people questioning the healthcare system, in part due to what's happened over the last several years with the pandemic, questioning the financial system. We're probably anticipating a systemic collapse of the banking system and a reorganization of finance as we know it. And we're becoming more and more aware of how driven our government, at least here in the United States, is by a military-industrial complex and politicians who are essentially getting paid by corporations and the full corporate capture or seizure of non-governmental organizations around the world. And all of this is really a beautiful thing. All of this is great, because when we experience what we don't like, it helps us get even clearer on what we do desire, what we desire for ourselves, what we desire for the world, what we desire to create in terms of a container for everyone else, and how we want to contribute in the world. And so a changed mind, and this show is about getting clear on what we want to create and who we want to be in the world, and learning the skills, because they're skills, to actually evolve into that person, to shed the old personality that we've been, that has gotten us to the life we have. And I don't know where you are right now. Maybe there are a lot of things that you like about your life, but there's some things you don't. Well, those things you don't have been created by who you've been. And so we've got to shed that old personality. We've got to rewire your brain. We've got to rehabit your nervous system and the way that you think and the way that you feel, so that you can become the person who's living the life that you envision. Or maybe you're in a place right now, like I was 10 years ago, where you're stressed, you're anxious, you're depressed, Maybe you're even having thoughts of suicide. Maybe you're using drugs or alcohol or pornography to self-soothe because you're having a hard time coping with life. I understand that. I was there. And it's okay wherever you are right now. Because wherever you are is now the starting point or the launch pad for where we're going to go together over the course of many conversations that we're going to be having. Because that's what this journey is about. It's not about doing it on your own. It's about doing it together. And so we're going to be going beyond where self-help or therapy or personal growth has been. We're going to be talking about really common things like how do we make more money and how do we discover our purpose and how do I stop feeling so anxious and hey, I've got this habit of feeling like I'm not good enough or people pleasing or codependence or whatever other label someone has put on it. I've got my childhood traumas. How do I transform those? And we're going to do that together. We're going to be bringing in other guests from time to time, peer mentors of mine, some people who have been my coaches and my teachers to share with you their genius so that you can continue to evolve into yours. And we're also going to be having conversations about where we want to go in the world together. We're going to be, taking a look at, from time to time, global issues. How do we live more in harmony with the other creatures on this planet and take care of this garden that we were born into so that it continues to sustain itself? How do we navigate what feels like some of the chaos that's happening in the world and what feels like an increasing speed without getting pulled into it? How do you stay, as one of my teachers and mentors who I've studied, an Indian man by the name of Paramahansa Yogananda, who wrote a very impactful book that I'm sure I'll share more with you about, called Autobiography of a Yogi. Yogananda said, the true yogi stands unshaken amidst the crashing of worlds. How do we stand unshaken amidst everything that's going on outside in the experiences of our lives that feel like we have no control around? And rather than be reactive to them, how do we start developing such a spirit, such an energy inside of ourselves, such a power that we start to dictate how the world around us operates, right? Again, both individually and together. And so that's going to be the journey that we're on in this show. There's so many ways for us to be able to connect and to do this work together. If you enjoy seeing me in the studio, you can check out some of our highlights on YouTube. We're going to be posting a lot of our content on social media to bring positivity and inspiration and transpiration to your newsfeed on a daily basis on Instagram and Facebook and other social platforms. You can listen in like you are right now on all of the major podcast platforms. And you're going to be hearing from my wife, Carol. Carol's the president of our organization, of Whole Human. And she's been incredible support for me. And she is part of this co-creation. And so while I'll be doing most of the talking with you, she's going to come in from time to time and share her wisdom, because she has a perspective that is completely different than mine. Not just because each and every one of us has an individual perspective, but, Carol grew up in Colombia. I don't know if I'm saying that as she would say it. I always try my best with the accent. But Carol grew up in Bogota, and came here when she was 18 years old with, $100 in a suitcase and her mom. And so she came over as an immigrant, and she worked her way up. Her first job was working at 7-Eleven and getting yelled at by the customers because she could barely understand what they were saying. And then she got a job as a customer care person for a big insurance company and worked her way all the way up to be number 2 in that insurance company. And when that insurance company, a big company, sold, the founder and CEO asked her to come over and start a new company. So she has an incredible story of, American success, the American dream. And then as we built this business together, she has gone through her long, dark night of the soul, right? An echo of the trauma she had growing up, and has worked her own processes to heal those and let go and surrender and allow. And so she's going to be bringing her experience into these conversations as well, too. Because if creation is about, a feminine perspective, a masculine perspective, two people coming together in order to create something extraordinary. And we want to be extraordinary for you. The reason why we created a changed mind now is because we're aware of how much dissonance there is out there. We are aware that more than ever there has the potential to be stressful, unproductive, negative influences out there, certainly through the mainstream media. But even if you look at the conversations in alternative media and places where we may be able to get more honest information, it's a lot of doom and gloom. And we don't view the world that way. We think we're going through a chapter of change right now. Carol and I believe that, and my team believes that, and our community believes that. We're going through a chapter of change, and we're very excited about where we're going. That's why at the beginning of every show, I share with you that this conversation, this podcast, is our vision to be a sanctuary for your spirit, a place where you can go every single day and be reminded of the certainty of the goodness of the future. The good prevails. And we need to remind ourselves of that, because at any point throughout history, there have been, concerning times, dark times, and, it may feel that way right now. But the truth is there's more opportunity than ever before. And you get to choose. Do you want to journey forward with those people who are excited, who are creative, who are inspired, who are learning how to free themselves from, again, the voice in the head and that negative inner critic, and working together to create extraordinary, beautiful things in the world? Or do you want to be a part of, the current conversation, sort of the momentum of the old system and the negativity and the chaos and the crisis, right? So here, obviously, we're moving in a direction of joy, of inspiration, of positivity. And not just talking about how to be positive, but actually the tools to radically transform the way that you've been feeling, the way that you've been thinking, because thoughts really are things, and they do create your reality. I'm going to be talking about that on episode 2 and episode 3, the difference between where personal development has been and where it's going, which is in the next episode, and then really how we do create our own reality, how there's a natural, mechanical, automatic mechanism that is at play, that is responding to the way that you think. And then we're going to go deeper into everything you can possibly imagine. So get ready for an amazing ride. And if this sounds like something that you would be interested in, definitely get into episode 2, where I'm going to lay the foundation for how this is a completely different conversation than where self-help and personal development has been. And if you're still with me, but none of this resonates with you, what the heck are you still doing with me? So it sounds like you're on your way to episode 2 no matter what, because you're still here. And I want to honor the fact that you're here. I respect the fact that you're here. I know there are a lot of places where you could have your eyes and ears right now, but I also believe that there are no coincidences in life. And you're going to be hearing a lot more about that from me. And that we're meant to be here together in this conversation, right? That you've been asking some questions, some powerful questions in your life, perhaps from a place of pain, perhaps from a place of excitement. And, there's the adage in scripture, ask and you shall what? Receive. And so whatever you've been asking, this is part of the answer. And I'm honored to be a part of that. I'm going to do my best to provide you massive value from my own personal experience, to hold myself to be authentic and vulnerable with you at all times, so that it inspires you to be authentic and vulnerable, because that's when you're going to be at your most powerful. And to really listen to what it is you need and the feedback that you provide me, and to just be with you on this journey, walking together every day, one day at a time. Some days are easier, some days are harder, but we're going to be doing it together. If you want to go a little bit deeper, I've got some amazing free trainings. I've got my Mind Hack ebook. And if you want to subscribe to our newsletter, you can absolutely do that. You can just go to www.davidbayer.com, or you could probably find the link in the show notes to this episode. Jump on over to my website, get subscribed, and be a part of the community. And as I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, subscribe. That way you get notifications when the new episodes come out. Leave me a comment, or a review rather, of the show, because I want to know what you think, and I want others to know what you think. And get on to episode 2. if you haven't listened to it yet. Like I said before, we're going to be talking about the difference between personal development 1.0 and personal development 2.0 as sort of a glide path into this conversation of how you can have a powerful living experience, how regardless of what's going on in the external world today, your dreams, your vision, they're possible. And in fact, they're inevitable if you can learn how to align your thinking and your emotions with the vision that you have. And I'm going to be teaching you everything that I've learned over the last decade, having studied neuroscience, behavioral psychology, spiritual and wisdom teachings. You're going to hear a little bit more about my story and Carol's story in episode 4, where I'm going to share with you our journeys to India and ashrams and ceremonial work with indigenous people and getting into plant medicine and psychedelics and breath work and somatic release and fasting and pretty much the rabbit trail that I went down after I got clean and sober in recovery, thanks to the Alcoholics Anonymous program and 12 steps. So this is going to be a distillation of a ton of technologies into some simple frameworks that you can use so that you can have a changed mind. I love you very much. Looking forward to seeing you in the next episode. I hope to meet you in person sometime soon. See you in the next segment. Hey, it's David. Hop on over to davidbear.com. Click right here. There's also a link in the show notes, and sign up for our newsletter. You'll get immediate access to my free Mind Hack ebook, as well as a couple of trainings to help you master the inner game. This is a great way to stay informed and be a part of our community and be notified of special announcements. Click below, head on over to the website, get subscribed. If you loved this video, make sure you check out this one or this one, and I will see you in the next video.